The last ride home. John stared at the dashboard clock. 11:47 p.m. Another late night at the office. Another lonely drive home through the desolate outskirts of town. His eyes felt heavy, his body exhausted from endless meetings and piles of paperwork. The moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows on the winding road ahead. He rubbed his eyes and adjusted the rearview mirror. The road stretched before him, empty and silent. Trees lined the edges, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. He was almost home, just another 15 minutes or so, when he saw her. A girl, standing by the side of the road, illuminated by his headlights. She was beautiful, with long flowing hair and a white dress that seemed to glow in the moonlight. She raised her hand, signaling for him to stop. John's foot instinctively moved to the brake. He pulled over and rolled down the passenger side window. "Do you need a ride?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. The girl nodded, her eyes wide and pleading. "Yes, please. My car broke down, and my phone is dead. Can you take me home?" John hesitated for a moment, then unlocked the doors. "Sure, hop in." She climbed into the passenger seat, her movements graceful and fluid. As she settled in, John couldn't help but notice how cold the air had become. He glanced at her, but she just smiled faintly, her eyes distant and sad. "Where do you live?" he asked, starting the car again. "Just a few miles up the road," she replied softly. "Thank you for stopping. Not many people would." John nodded, trying to make small talk to fill the silence. "It's no problem. It's not safe for anyone to be out here alone at this hour." As they drove, John noticed how quiet she was. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, and she stared straight ahead, almost as if she were in a trance. He glanced at her occasionally, feeling a strange sense of unease. "Do you live around here?" he asked, trying to break the tension. She nodded slightly. "Yes, I grew up here. It's a small town, not much changes." John nodded, unsure of what else to say. The road seemed longer than usual, the darkness outside pressing in on the car. He felt an inexplicable chill in the air, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned to him, her eyes filled with a sorrow that made his heart ache. "I've been waiting a long time for someone to come along." John's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Waiting? For what?" "For this," she said, her voice echoing strangely in the enclosed space of the car. Suddenly, the car's engine sputtered and died, and they rolled to a stop in the middle of the road. John cursed under his breath and tried to restart the engine, but it was no use. He looked at the girl, who sat calmly, her eyes now locked onto his. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice shaking. "You need to see something," she said, her tone insistent but gentle. John's heart pounded as he followed her gaze. Ahead, in the distance, he saw faint lights. As his eyes adjusted, he realized they were headlights, flickering and wavering in the darkness. He could make out the shape of a car, mangled and twisted, lying on its side in a ditch by the road. "That's my car," she whispered. "It crashed here 5 years ago." John's breath caught in his throat. "But you're here. You're alive." She shook her head slowly, her expression sorrowful. "I died that night. I've been waiting for someone to help me find peace." John's mind raced, trying to process her words. "What do you need me to do?" She reached out and touched his hand, her fingers icy cold. "Help me. Tell my family. They never knew what happened to me." John swallowed hard and nodded. "I will. I promise." She smiled, a look of relief washing over her face. "Thank you." In an instant, she was gone. The car's engine roared back to life, and John found himself alone, sitting in stunned silence. He drove the remaining distance home, his mind a whirl of confusion and fear. The next day, he went to the police and told them about the crash. They found the wreckage exactly where he said it would be, with the remains of a young woman inside. Her family was notified, finally able to grieve and find closure. John never forgot that night, the night he gave a ride to a ghost. He often thought of her, the beautiful girl who had found peace through his kindness. And every time he drove that lonely road, he felt a chill in the air and wondered if she was still out there, waiting for someone to help her find her way home.
Subscribe to our channel for more interesting horror spooky stories.